Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant! Insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies took care of business with their weekend road trip. They finished up 2-0 against the Mavericks and Pelicans. It was not without some hiccups. Both games were a little bit frightening at times, but the Grizzlies survived in both as Ja Morant and Desmond Bane essentially took over both games. And now the Grizzlies are within a game of the second seed. Right now, they are one game behind the Lakers and the Nuggets. They are one game ahead of the Rockets, and they play again tonight. Second night of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights. They play the Suns on Monday night. By the way, if you're in the Nashville area, I will be at Noble's Beer Hall hosting a Grizzlies watch party. So come on down. Maybe it's spring break for you and yours. It is for me. Come to Noble's Beer Hall. I will be giving away some Grizzlies prizes. We will have $1 off Wiseacre Tiny Bombs. So if that appeals to you, come hang out with other Grizzlies fans. Have a good time. Again, Noble's Beer Hall in Nashville, Tennessee, 7 p.m. tonight. On Monday, as the Grizzlies try to win their third straight game by playing the Phoenix Suns. Hopefully, I will see several of you there. All right. The wins over the Mavericks and the Pelicans, like I said, was a little bit frightening at times. Perhaps you might use the term harrowing. The Grizzlies needed to, of course, win these basketball games as they find themselves in a playoff race or a seeding race for the playoffs, and they were heavy favorites in both games. I guess technically they covered against the Mavericks. I think they were 10-point favorites. They ended up winning by 11 somehow. This is after trailing by 5 going into the fourth quarter. The decimated Mavericks, the absolutely ruined Dallas Mavericks, played well. Brandon Williams, on a 2-way contract, scored 31 points off the bench for the Mavericks. Najee Marshall had 29 points and 17 rebounds. I mean, somebody's got to score. But still, those guys had the Grizzlies on the ropes. They trailed for a lot of the basketball game, and the Grizzlies almost got embarrassed on national TV. Of course, ESPN was hoping this would be a Ja Morant versus Luka Doncic showdown when they scheduled the game. Of course, Luka playing very well on the Los Angeles Lakers. But the Grizzlies did finally assert themselves in the fourth quarter. They held the Mavericks to just 17 points in that fourth quarter. The Mavericks only made 5 out of 21 field goal attempts in the fourth. Meanwhile, Ja Morant and Desmond Bane were 9 for 12 combined from the field in the fourth quarter. Ja Morant and Desmond Bane scored 21 of the Grizzlies' 33 fourth quarter points. Ja Morant absolutely came through in the second half, a monster second half for Ja Morant. He was only 3 for 13 from the field in the first half. And this had continued a trend that I'd been monitoring about how Ja starts all these games very, very slowly. And in the post-game walk-off interview with Cassidy Hubbarth, Ja Morant said, "I got some help at halftime." As in, I got massive pain medication. I got Toradol. I don't know what it is. But apparently Ja got some medicine at halftime, made him feel much healthier, and he ended up having a really good second half. He made 10 out of his 16 field goal attempts in the second half, on his way to scoring 24 points in that half. For the game, he ended up scoring 31 points. Again, this is a game where he started 1 for 10 from the field. He also set the franchise record for the most consecutive made free throws. He made his first free throw of the game. That's 41 straight, breaking the tie he had with Jeff Green. He then missed his subsequent free throw. Then in the next game against the Pelicans, he only made 7 out of 11 free throws, including missing a very important clutch free throw that ended up not costing the Grizzlies. But Ja Morant had a huge second half. Ja Morant took a lot of shots, 29 field goal attempts. Ja Morant carried over that success scoring-wise against the Pelicans. In that game, he had 32 points. This is the first time all season Ja Morant has had consecutive 30-point games. Over his past 7 games now, this is 7 straight games where he scored 20 or more. In those 7 games, he's averaging 26.4 points per game and 7.1 assists per game. You might say, oh, man, we were worried about Ja for nothing. This is the Ja Morant we know and love. I'm going to push back on that just a little bit. Yes, the 26 points per game is more in line with the all-NBA performances we've seen from Ja Morant in his career. But you, the Grits and Grinds listener, I believe you're the discerning Grizzlies fan. While I think the Grizzlies absolutely needed Ja Morant to save them the last 2 games, I do not think this is the version of Ja Morant the Grizzlies need to win. It's probably the version the Grizzlies need to win without Jaren Jackson Jr. And to be clear, I think it sounded like I just contradicted myself. What I meant to say, what I was saying in my brain, this is not the Ja Morant the Grizzlies, I think, need to win in the playoffs. This is possibly right now the Ja Morant we need to save us in regular season matchups against the shorthanded Mavericks and the shorthanded Pelicans. Right now, Ja Morant's efficiency is not there. He's shooting the basketball a lot. On his way to averaging 26 points per game in his past 7 appearances, he's only shooting 40%. Now, some of that is that first half versus second half split. In the first halves of these basketball games, he's closer to 30% from the field. Now he kicks it into gear in the second half. I hope that it's not that he's always taking a pain shot or some kind of medication at halftime that makes him numb to how his body feels. That doesn't feel like a long-term strategy for success for the Grizzlies. But right now, Ja's being asked to do a lot. I think we can be at least excited that he has delivered. Also, by the way, in those 7 games, the Grizzlies have not had that much success. They're 4-3. And of course, those 7 games, those 7 appearances leave out 2 games that Ja Morant missed with injury. They lost both games that he missed. But in his last 7 appearances, these games I'm talking about where he scored a lot of points, the Grizzlies are 4-3, but the 4 wins, close win over the Pelicans, comeback win over the Mavericks where you trailed going into the fourth quarter, comeback win over the Suns where you went into overtime, comeback win where you barely eked it out against the Magic. So we're talking 4 games. Every single one of those 4 wins, the Grizzlies were losing. And many of them, they were losing by double digits. Actually, I think all of those 4 games, they were down double digits. They trailed the Mavericks by 11 halfway through the second quarter. They trailed the Pelicans by 14 halfway through the second quarter. So maybe the correlation is not these things are happening because Ja Morant's shooting. I don't actually think that is the correlation whatsoever. I think the Grizzlies are not playing very well. Ja Morant is not playing at his career best by any stretch, despite the fact that the scoring has jumped back up. Right now, the Grizzlies as a team are not playing very well. Ja Morant is thus being tasked with shooting a lot, and this is not the best version of the Grizzlies. I hope I explained all that well. I'm glad the Grizzlies are getting the results, but right now I'm not super excited about this Grizzlies team overall, despite winning 2 straight. And of course, it all goes back to the health of the squad. No Jaren Jackson Jr. for either one of these games. Now, apparently, Jaren is participating in shoot-arounds, but he's listed out. Actually, the injury report is not available for the game tonight on Monday. We're going to assume he's going to be out. Since he was listed as out, we feel like they will list him as doubtful the game before he returns. This pattern of injury reporting they always do. But no Jaren Jackson Jr., that's just the biggest issue for the Grizz. Once he returns, what is the best offensive hierarchy for the Grizzlies going forward? Ja seems to be chafing a bit at like a secondary role to Jaren. The Grizzlies usually have better success when Jaren shoots the ball more. By the way, this is interesting. Maybe this is nothing. Like Desmond Bane had massive games in both of these games over the weekend. Against the Mavericks, he had 27 points and a career-high 16 rebounds. He also had 6 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks in that game. No Grizzlies player in franchise history had ever hit all of those marks in this same game before. Against the Pelicans, he goes for 30 points, has 9 rebounds, and 8 assists. Now, Desmond also is having to do a lot. Like, they got nothing from the bench, essentially, against the Pelicans. These last 2 games from Desmond Bane are 2 of his highest field goal attempt games of this season. Right now, when Desmond shoots the ball a lot, the Grizzlies have been winning. They're 5-0 when he takes 22 or more shots. That might be absolutely nothing. But figuring out the offense and how it works best when everyone's healthy, I think is going to be one of the ways or one of the main factors for the Grizzlies being able to win a playoff series this year, and we still haven't worked it out. I still don't feel like that's worked out whatsoever. But at the very least, Ja Morant and Desmond Bane did carry the Grizzlies, and we get these 2 wins, and there's still, 20-something games for the Grizzlies to work out exactly what they need to be doing. Ja, by the way, in his last 5 games, this is 5 straight games for Ja Morant, taking at least 22 field goal attempts. His career-long streak is 8 straight games. This is the second longest streak of Ja Morant's career, taking at least that many shots in a game. No other player in franchise history has ever gone 4 straight games, taking at least 22 field goal attempts. But Ja Morant, again, I have, to be clear, no criticisms over his performance over the last 2 games. It was called 12 the whole game. That's what we had to have. I don't feel like Jalen Wells was going to carry us. I don't think Zach Edey was going to carry us. I don't think Vince Williams Jr. was going to carry us. Luke Kennard didn't play against the Pelicans. Like, no one else is stepping up. I think maybe the egalitarian nature of the new offense has been frustrating the Grizzlies' success. And I do think maybe there was some talk for the team, Ja Morant and Desmond Bane at halftime of the Mavericks game being like, hey, just give us the ball. Like, this is how we're going to win, with us attacking and us scoring. And you saw massive second halves from Desmond Bane and Ja Morant. But like right now, the formula has been for the Grizzlies, trail at halftime. That's not great. And they've been struggling, and they've been playing so many close games. I mean, I know the Mavericks game ended up being an 11-point differential with Ja scoring all those buckets in the final minute. But we have played something like 9 straight games or so that have been very, very close. And I don't think it's built a lot of confidence among us Grizzlies fans. And some of that, of course, is just the lack of available players. Santi Aldama, this is concerning. Santi Aldama was unable to play along with Luke Kennard against the Pelicans. Like, the Grizzlies need Santi Aldama. Possibly because, once again, the Grizzlies' available bigs don't fit together. If Jaren's out and Santi is out, we've seen it. They won't play Brandon Clark and Zach Edey together. We had to dust off Jay Huff. By the way, Jay Huff had a pretty okay game against the Pelicans. Jay Huff was the 11th man in the game. Also, going back to like big picture, maybe fan frustration things or podcaster frustration things, I am beyond discouraged that we're in, year 5 of Ja, Dez, and Jaren all together. We're in year 5 of building around that big 3, and we're in a race for playoff seeding right now, and we got Lamar Stevens, Jay Huff, and John Conchar all playing important rotation minutes. I thought we'd be deeper and better by now. Alas, not so much. Let's go back to the Mavericks game. The Mavericks game, Santi Aldama was healthy enough to play, and he started. He had 11 points and 5 rebounds. Vince Williams Jr. off the bench had a solid game, made 2 out of his 3 three-point attempts. He scored 12 points, had 4 rebounds, a steal, and an assist. That's on just 6 field goal attempts. Brandon Clark had a massive game off the bench. Brandon Clark had 17 points, 1 off his season high, had 8 rebounds, had a season high 4 blocks, was 6 for 10 from the field. Luke Kennard had 7 points, 2 steals, a block, and an assist. Zach Edey only made 4 out of 11 field goal attempts, but did have double-digit rebounds, including 9, count them, 9 offensive rebounds in this game. The Grizzlies dominated the rebounding totals their last 2 games against the Mavericks and the Pelicans. The Mavericks, of course, had no bigs, 0 bigs. Kessler Edwards started at center, and while Zach was not able to really impose himself offensively in this game, at the very least, he got those rebounds that were needed, including those offensive rebounds that led to the Grizzlies being able to pull the game out. Jalen Wells played 21 minutes, had 5 points and 5 rebounds. Scottie Pippen Jr. had a nice weekend. He was a spark plug, it felt like, in this game. 4 points, 4 assists, and 2 steals against the Mavericks. Moving on to the Pelicans game. The bench, not great. You had a combined 0 points from John Conchar and Gigi Jackson. By the way, Gigi Jackson against the Mavericks made his only 3-point attempt. He had 5 points and 2 rebounds in 13 minutes. The bench against the Pelicans combined to score 23 points, and 12 of those were scored by Scottie Pippen Jr. The Grizzlies, of course, have the highest scoring bench in the NBA. But Scottie had 12. Brandon only had 2 points. Brandon played huge minutes down the stretch. The closer, Brandon had a big impact on the second half. Brandon barely played in the first half because of foul trouble. By the way, I think taking Brandon Clark out with 3 fouls in the first half it's one of the dumbest things that Taylor Jenkins does. Worrying about foul trouble for your starters is one thing. Worrying about foul trouble for a bench guy who hardly ever plays more than 20 minutes, I just don't get it. I will never get it. But Brandon only had 2 points despite, I think, playing very important minutes down the stretch of this game. Gigi, scoreless, missed all 4 of his 3-point attempts. Lamar Stevens got 4 minutes of run in the first half. He scored 1 point. Jay Huff did make 2 3-pointers. He had 8 points. So you didn't get much from the bench. That's how you end up with Desmond Bane and Ja Morant accounting for 55% of the Grizzlies' points. Edey only scored 6 points, but again, 7 offensive rebounds, so 16 offensive rebounds for Zach Edey in the past 2 games. He finishes with 12 rebounds total. Vince Williams Jr. missed 7 out of his 8 3-point attempts. He was not the one in the closing lineup. They closed with Jalen Wells. Jalen Wells only made 1 out of 5 field goal attempts in the fourth quarter, but the one he made was huge. He finished 3 for 12 in the game, plays 33 minutes. They ended up closing this game with Ja and Scottie Pippen Jr. playing together, and then Desmond Bane was out there with Jalen Wells and Brandon Clark. So a small ball lineup there. The previous game against the Mavericks, they closed with Luke Kennard playing alongside Desmond Bane and Ja Morant, and I thought that was particularly funny because literally on the last episode, I was pointing out how strange it was that with Jaren Jackson Jr. unavailable, they weren't playing any Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Luke Kennard minutes. Those guys played no minutes together in the loss to the Thunder. But they did play together to great success against the Mavericks. And by the way, here's some funny numbers. I mean, these are the numbers we talk about. Do you want to know what the updated net rating is for when the Grizzlies play Morant, Desmond Bane, and Luke Kennard together? These are all small sample sizes. But this season, when Desmond, and Luke Kennard are on the court together, the Grizzlies have a plus 32.3 net rating. It's only 132 possessions, so not very many. But remember, these numbers have always been preposterous. They did not play any minutes or possessions together last season because of injuries, suspensions, and tanking and whatnot. But the previous year in 2022, 2023, remember when those three guys were on the court together, they had a plus 40 net rating in 136 possessions. So add that together, what's that, like 268 possessions? We're talking about somewhere between a plus 35, somewhere around there. Oh, but it's just regular season success. No, guess what? Remember in the postseason, they only played 75 possessions together, but they had an even better net rating, plus 48. So we're talking about, I haven't done the actual math. I apologize. We're talking about 350 possessions now. Well over plus 35 points per 100 possessions, better than your opponent. And certainly there's some shooting variance juicing those numbers. I remember doing that research before. But that, at the very least, has been a potent offensive mix for the Grizzlies. So it was weird when they weren't all playing together, when they were all healthy, and you were missing Jaren Jackson Jr. Hopefully they'll get back to that on Monday night. Luke missed the game due to a back injury on Sunday. I am hoping, fingers crossed, this was just a load management situation with the 3 games in 4 nights with the back-to-back. They held Luke out on Sunday, so hopefully he's able to go on Monday. Going back to something I don't think I finished my thought on, Vince Williams, he's gotten the start when some of the bigs, when Santi's not available, so he started against the Pelicans. I thought he played mostly okay, except for the 3-point shooting, and it seems like he needs to attack more and defer more on some of these 3-point shots. I know they're open, but also there's a reason that he's open. The other team, I think, is okay with Vince shooting threes. And right now, Vince has not matched the 3-point accuracy from last season. He's just 27.5% on the year. That's been a big disappointment. And I think he's good at defending, of course. He's good at rebounding. He's good at passing. I think he needs to focus more on being that glue guy. I don't think they need to play as egalitarian as they have. They need to just focus like they are. All right, Ja and Dez are shooting. And I want Vince to be aggressive and attack, but that means go to the rim, I think, more right now than settling for 3-pointers like he's been doing. Because so far, the 3-point shooting has been a disappointment from Vince Williams Jr. His overall impact has been a little bit disappointing. I know he said last week he was still at 80% or so I don't know how exactly healthy he's been. But I really hoped that Vince would be a massive positive impact player for the Grizzlies this year. We haven't totally seen it yet. And some of that is just he's shooting the basketball a lot and his 3-pointers aren't usually going in. Also, this goes back to the disappointment of G.G. Jackson so far. I mean, he's played 21 games. He's shooting 34% from 3, and they clearly don't trust him. And I'm not seeing a lot where I would be that, I don't know, trusting of him either. We know he's a young guy. He's got those skills, but can he make the winning impact on a basketball game when it isn't just shooting or scoring? That remains a question for him, and it remains a question for the Grizzlies. Again, their depth, the players they chose to use, and now wondering how that will affect them going forward for the rest of the year. But since the Grizzlies play tonight, I will end today's episode right there. Reminder, if you live in Middle Tennessee or near Nashville, come on down to Noble's Beer Hall tonight. Let's watch the Grizzlies take on the Suns together. If you want to support my program, you can do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you sign up for $5 a month over there, you can join the listener Slack channel. You also get a bonus episode every month. Come join the community of listeners at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right, hope you guys have a great Monday. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.